like we'd be drinking pints.
Yeah.
Yep. All righty. Are we
Um,
on?
have we started?
No.
It's recording anyway.
Yeah, but I'm just recording. It's just for backup.
Okay.
Hi, John.
Hello.
Hello,
Good
John.
morning, everyone, or whatever time of the day it is, wherever you are.
Bit later for me, John.
We are now live we are streaming, so welcome everybody.
Okay. Hello.
It is good to see everyone and on this this May day. This day, the 13th of May. It is awesome to be with you all. I've actually been very, very much looking forward to the conversation today. So yay. We will start where we always start, bringing ourselves into the room and sharing what's going on in our lives that is meaningful, powerful, joyful. And Angie's got an announcement, so I'm gonna make you go first.
Hey, have I not brought this up already? Okay.
Not
so
officially.
Hello everybody. I'm actually in Chapel Hill right now, but usually I'm in Omaha. And anyway, my big news is that I'm going to be leaving UNO and going to the University of Connecticut to take over directing the School of Public Policy there. Officially I start August 23rd, but I have a month contract to kind of try to get up to speed on things. So that's really exciting. So we're in the middle of all the moving, all the stuff that you do. And I've been thinking a lot about like, what does a good departure look like? Because it's certainly not what I've been experiencing, but I'm sure there's lots of better ways to do it. And I'm going to try to take those lessons and and it's good to see everybody.
Yay. Well, congratulations. This is very, very exciting.
Yes,
Very
congratulations.
exciting. And definitely if you want to play around with catalytic thinking for what does the good transition look like?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because it's real easy for it to go south. Yeah. Wonderful. Carl, what's going on in your world?
Hi, everyone. So I'm Carl. I'm about 20 miles outside of London in the UK. So just to answer John's question, I think just before we went live, it's 6 p.m. in the evening here. So I'm doing my usual act of self-control in these meetings and not having a beer after a long day when you guys are all having breakfast at thereabouts. What's going on? Yeah, I'm all right. Spinning a few too many plates. I I have this sort of like academic role now, which I think I've told you about a few times before, which is good. Though we are doing something fascinating at the minute, which I think Angie might know about already. There's a project that I'm working on with my colleagues called Moonshot Philanthropy, which is interesting. And I've been reading things like the Rockefeller book on big bet philanthropy over the weekend and so on, which I'm sure we could talk about sometime. So yeah, I'm good. And my sort of miracle moment at the minute is that I went to the gym today for about the first time in 18 months. So there's hope yet.
Good for you and on all counts. It's good to see you, John. How are you today? What are you bringing into our room today?
Well, good morning, everyone, or afternoon again for you. Thank you for your restraint. I am in the San Bernardino, Yamava territories that were lands not ceded. I am actually wrapping up my first semester back in school. So I have finals next week. So I'm really like trying to ask myself, what was I thinking in doing this? I have a paper that won't go away, a research paper that won't go away. I keep sending it in and the professor keeps sending it back and saying, but you can make it better. So I'm just thinking, I just want to make it go away. But I'm actually amazed at how much I have learned in just one semester back in school. So I know I made the right choice. I'm very excited about that. And I had a chance to submit my first set of notes for this group, and hopefully I did a good job, and I'm excited about that work. And finally, I'm just always excited to be with great people. And I believe that this is one of the best books. So Angie, I'm very excited to kind of track with you and learn more. So if there's any way I can learn more or follow along, please let me know. And it's always good to see Dimitri. I love that background, Dimitri. I'm trying to get you to send it to me so I can put it in my background. And it's good to see you, Hildy. So it's good to be here with each and every one of you. And I'm looking forward to today's discussion.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. What are you studying, John?
I'm working on a master's in communications. So I'm in a provisional. If I pass these classes, then I get to actually enroll in the program as a matriculated graduate student. And if I don't, then I'll just continue doing what I do, which is dabble and learn anyway. So I'm looking forward to it, though.
Awesome. 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 Thank you. Mr. Petropoulos. I will get rid of, I'll hand over the mic.
Thanks, Hildy. All the echo on this side. I don't know if you heard it on that side. I'm Dimitri Petropoulos from Tucson, Arizona, sitting like right, Hildy's right over there. So right next to her, in the lands of the Tohono O'odham, unceded lands, as well as many other indigenous people who have lived here through the millennia. So we get to share with them. I'm going to share my awesome today, and my awesome today is that I am a grandpa for the second time. Got to see our baby son, grandson, Nico, which thank you, Hildy, for sharing that. And that's Athena. So you have like Athena and Nico Petropoulos. So you couldn't get any Greeker than that. She looks so happy with him in her lap. I will say that in reality, she's not quite as happy with having someone who has usurped her as the queen of the household. But it is, part of life and progress, and I'm really happy to be monikered with Grandpa. So that's my awesome for today, and I'm really excited to be here and happy to see all of these faces. It's always a pleasure to be part of this.
Congrats.
Thanks. It's very, very, very cool and so frustrating for them. Oh my gosh, she is just Nicholas is barely a week old, and Athena is really not happy. So we are confident that she will grow out of it, because we all do, but I hate to say this, it is very grandmotherly to say this, but it's really fun to watch from afar. To be able to go, oh yeah. So I too am in Tucson, Arizona, sitting right next to Dimitri here. In addition to that delightful news, life has just been really, really full and rich around here. Every single thing that I have been working to put in place has been happening. And it feels both fabulous and amazing. And we look up and go, oh my gosh, this works. And a little overwhelming because it's all so big and so incredible. So yeah, it's all really, really good and really, really daunting and all happening, which is very, very exciting, which is in part why I've been so excited waiting for this conversation, because as we get closer and closer to raising money, we're going to get closer and closer to hiring. And the first hiring is going to be someone who will work alongside me in guiding the entirety of what's next. And so that sort of leads us right into the conversation today. I do know that Justin will be joining us late. Vu sent a note saying he will not be able to make it. Eli sometimes shows up and sometimes doesn't, and we never know. It's a delight when he shows up. He was so inspiring last time. And we've got several other people who, Shantine very, very much wanted to be here today. She has joined us for several of these conversations, and she woke up not feeling well this morning. So we miss all of you and hope you will all be with us soon. I want to go over just a little bit of where we were, and I do want to say, John, your notes were fabulous. So if there's any doubt at all, they were absolutely perfect. They went online just as you had sent them. So thank you for that. And I do know that Shadow will be, I think Shadow will be helping us with the notes today. So a shout out to you, Shadow, from across the very, very large pond. I was looking over all of our notes from the last couple of conversations about hiring practices and processes, and we've got really good stuff. These have been great conversations. These have been energizing conversations about what is possible. And a lot of what we talked about last time was getting down to the specifics. Okay, hiring practices include a job description. What does good look like for a job description? What does a job description make possible for folks? Hiring includes the ad that leads to the job description. How do we talk about it? What are we putting in that ad? One of the questions that I really wanted to tackle today, in addition to our continuing to go through, we had talked early on about what an interview would look like if it was creating what is possible for all parties. In addition to going through each step in the hiring and employment process, because once someone is hired, it doesn't stop. That's when the good stuff actually starts. Is looking at what needs to be in place for us to attract a broad, diverse pool of applicants in the first place. So we talked about, having an ad, but if nobody sees the ad, then what good does that do? We talked about a job description. What needs to be in place to let people know that there is a job, that one of the interesting things that we've been talking about is the workforce shortage, that folks are having trouble hiring. Our intention has been, and the budget that we've created has been, to hire at a salary rate that is attractive. That is not the typical nonprofit, well, you're doing good work BS. That is actually hiring folks at a wage that honors the work that needs to be done. And so what needs to be in place to attract that diverse pool of resources that we want, of applicants, that we want to bring in to chat with? I mean, one of the things that excites me about this process is getting to bring really smart people into the conversation. So that suddenly occurred to me as it's coming out of my mouth, is as a separate question. What do we do with folks who are interested and yet we only hire one person? Which is thinking about our mission of such deep engagement. That's probably question number 2. So let's start with what needs to be in place for folks to even know about this. guess we're talking promotion.
So I would start by saying that we need some form of language and words that reflects who we are, and lives our values, to go back to the work that we did a couple of years ago. So we want from the very go for people to not just sort of understand what the role entails, but to understand who we are. And I know that all those hygiene factors about salary and so on are really important. But I think what is really important for us, given how critical something like this is when you make your first hire, is that we recruit someone who, well, we recruit using sort of purpose and values, not just skills. We can teach people skills, but we can't. It's much harder to imbue in them the purpose that I think is necessary and the values that I think are necessary to be effective and successful in this environment. So I would start with sort of the right words, and then I think what we almost sort of want in place is word of mouth, is almost, I as you just sort of highlighted, if we are going to spend dollars advertising somewhere, that's going to cost money that we'd obviously rather sort of not spend, and B, we're probably going to be pitching it into an environment where it's very hard for a small organization like us to be noticed, however much we spend on advertising and so on. And then, of course, we get into all sorts of other problems if we spend lots of money doing things like that. So I think for us, I think it's about having people who are sort of willing to sort of go out and fly the flag. So people need to be primed, which maybe is another set of words.
Which people need to be primed?
The people who understand us and share our vision for where we're going, and I guess sort of share our passion. Because again, recruitment is a bit of a lottery at times, in my experience, in terms of sort of who you get. And I think this sort of thing about recruiting people for values. So, I mean, this may not be the most equitable thing to say, but I suspect that for us at our stage, that recruiting someone who is perhaps known to us, I don't necessarily mean known to us on this call, but someone who has a connection into our community, I suspect that might be the sort of candidate that we're looking for, because we want someone who sort of like gets it, who sort of sees where we're coming from and isn't stepping into a world that is alien to them. Someone who is of the community that we are trying to support, ideally.
Yeah. Awesome. What else?
So I was thinking about, we just hired a new dean, but we had a really quite diverse pool of applicants that we were very pleased about, and our finalists, and I think it worked. The process worked well, and to attract those folks, in part because we had a pretty large committee that was very diverse and representing different parts of our college. And then, and that whole committee, and there were about 15 of us or something, all were tasked with, reaching out to our own networks, right? And in promoting the job. And then also we could nominate people we thought might be good for the job. And then there was somebody who would reach out to that person to say, kind of went to them, right? Asking them to apply. And then also we created, and I think this is kind of standard now, at least for dean searches, is a kind of like document that was an overview of what we were about, what our values were, what we were, kind of vision, mission, that kind of thing. So it was more than just like a, 1-page job ad. It was like a 10-page, here's what we're all about. And then we made it quite simple for them to apply also, basically, like sending their resume and a statement that, you know, to address those areas that we had noted we were looking for. I think that the network was really important to reach out to, and I know personally, I reached out to a lot of my networks, trying to reach out of my networks, but to, as well, to like different communities representing different race, ethnicities, even disciplines in our case, and gender identity, just being really intentional about reaching out to those different networks of groups too.
Could you share with us the document that you're talking about?
Yeah, I'll try to find it. I just went to look, we had a website, but it looks like they took it down.
Down.
But I'll try to find the document that we had put together, or yeah, send
That'd
it.
be awesome. That'd be awesome. You just shared like 6 amazing things. Like, the diverse committee reaching out to folks. The power of networking. Talk a little bit more, Angie, about making it simple to apply.
Yeah, I think what our job, and I've seen other jobs like at this kind of level of dean, at least, and director, which I think is somewhat equivalent to what we're probably looking for, is somebody in that has that kind of experience.
Yeah.
You know, it could be, some of them are simple as you're submitting your CV and a cover letter. So it's you know, still some work to kind of align with what, you know, asking someone to basically help us understand how what they do and believe and etc. aligns with what we are looking for or need. And then we had Zoom interviews from their kind of top applicants, and we made that a really big pool, so we wanted to have as much inclusion as possible in that stage too, so that if people's materials, we, you know, knew something about them a little bit, but not tons, like, so the Zoom interview was kind of the way to expand that and probe a little bit.
And when you say,
and give them a
when you,
chance. Sorry, go
when
ahead.
you say there were a lot of that you had a large group, a big pool of Zoom interviews, how big is big?
Well, for us, it was 12 people,
Okay, that's big.
but there were, I mean, with any of these jobs, there's not tons of applicants, so we had, I think, like 25 to 30 applicants, so almost half. We ended
Wow.
up doing Zoom, little, or yeah, third to half. And then from there, we had 4 people who came to campus, and they were quite diverse. I'll try to find if there's a website still up about those people, but yeah, it worked. We did end up extending the deadline because there was a feeling that we didn't have enough diversity in our pool yet, so we kind of did another push to get some folks who did end up applying ultimately. The second, and that's kind of push around, and ended up being invited to campus. That was, I think, important too, to, you know, take more time if we need it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's been so long since I hired. We used to be really good at it. I'm quite rusty. When you talked about the resume and cover letter, it suddenly occurred to me that the cover letter is, to me, the cover letter can be even more important than the resume.
Right. Yeah.
The thing that we always asked people to put in their cover, because a cover letter is generally wasted. People are either trying to summarize their resume. It's like, I can read your resume, thank you. We always have asked people, and I totally forgotten about that until you mentioned it, Angie, to put in the cover letter why they want the job.
Right.
Not why they think they're qualified, but why they want it, why it's important to them.
Why they'd want to come to work, yeah, in this organization versus
Yeah,
another.
yeah. Why? Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't applied for a job for a long time, and then I, applied for this job at UConn, and then also was on the committee for the dean search, and I was like, wow, it's a very good experience to go through, seeing that from the inside. And thinking about like, yeah, what worked or didn't work well, as an applicant or as somebody then who's like interviewing people too.
So what did and didn't for you?
Um, so I think like, there was an interesting discussions, at least in the dean search where, we're asking people to spend their time, right, to meet with us as Zoom and coming in person, and that is a pretty serious commitment of time. But we were, at some point, like asking people to quickly turn around and meet with us without giving them adequate time to prepare, I thought. And some people had the expectation of like, well, if they really want the job, they'll just do it kind of thing. And it's like, well, they're also like running their organization now, they're all like busy people. And they maybe aren't sure like, right, about leaving. I know, and I know personally when I was applying for the job that I'm going into, I also was like, I'm not sure if this is really a good idea or not. I'm just gonna do it because it looked really interesting and a good opportunity, but I don't, I also have been at this one, this organization for a long time, and it's gonna be hard to leave. Like there's gonna have to be a lot of opportunity, to outweigh the, staying where I am. And I don't know if like people fully, yeah, think of through that part of it. They're just kind of thinking about, well, of course you want to come here. It's a great organization. Like,
Right.
but there's like selling has to happen on both sides, I think, kind of thing, or convincing.
You're yeah, you're making me think about, and I was just doing, I did a webinar a week or so ago for the National Council on Nonprofits, which is part of what's been just really exciting around here. And it was about community engagement and talking about the fact that community engagement is not selling stuff, that we're so used to pitching our stuff out to the community. And what you're making me realize is this a sales process or is this an engagement process?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. It's not selling is not the right word, I think, but it is like trying to express on both sides how it could potentially be a good, I hate to say the word fit is not a good way to talk about it either.
It's
But
dating.
that,
We
yes,
need a
it kind of
date.
is. It's kind of is. It kind of is. Yeah. It's like, it's very vulnerable on both sides, I guess, right? You as an applicant are putting yourself in a very vulnerable position. You want people to like you. Like,
Yeah,
please
yeah,
like me.
yeah.
And then, the other side, you're hiring, you're like, well, if we really want this person to come here, like, of course, you're usually, on the hiring side, you're at least in the academic, you're interviewing 3 or 4 people in person, so you don't want to like commit without seeing before you see everybody. So it is a weird thing, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, and what I'm scribbling down here is that there's something very attractive about being honest about that vulnerability.
Yeah.
About, the will they like us?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing what you've just, I mean, you're perfect. You've just gone through it. You're
I've
like
just
in the
gone
middle of
through
it
all
right
this, yeah.
now. I'm thinking about the word of mouth because that's really when you're talking about that networking approach. I think you're right, Carl. I think we could pay for all the ads in the world. That the people we want are going to hear about us from people who love us, I think.
I guess I was trying to walk a tightrope between, on the one hand, you know, I mean, I'm not advocating that old style of board recruitment, for example, which is you meet your friend on the golf course and you tap him, because it is a him, on the shoulder. And he's recently retired, so he's got plenty of time on his hands, and yeah, you know what I'm saying here. So I'm not advocating that, but equally I'm sort of not advocating sort of like completely going to the other end of the spectrum and this being blind, because you know, I mean, I've been through those sort of processes where recruitment was so trying to do the right thing and genuinely was trying to do the right thing in terms of being equitable, that like you can't see where you know, I mean, if people went to university, what their education is, you can't see their name, you can't sort of see anything, you've advertised everywhere that you can sort of think of, and so on. That there's got to be some sort of middle ground that is equitable, whereby we are using our networks to actually to reach people that we might not be able to reach through those advertising channels and so on.
Right.
But is not just sort of about us sort of like just trying to find our friends, and so on.
Yeah. What attracts everything you guys are saying has just got my brain sparking, so I just need to share that. What attracts people who are not looking for a job? Because that's what suddenly occurred to me as you were talking, Carl, is that an ad is for people who are looking for a job, but we may be attracting somebody who's not currently looking, who says, "Oh, that's interesting."
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be my experience with this. I wasn't looking, sorry, Dimitri, I've interrupted you. And I'll just say like what helped for me is like the person who contacted me, the current director of the school, kind of kept reaching out to me to like encourage me to apply and talking to me about why I should apply and what was great things that were going on. And then, you know, other kind of people also that I knew kind of randomly contacted me about the same job because they had heard about it and thought, oh, I might be a good fit for that. So, so it's kind of like having, yeah, those different people reach out that made a difference.
Couple of comments. One, Hildy, to your question, is being intrigued. And I was thinking exactly about your comment that the person doesn't know they're looking for a job. So what's intriguing about this that makes me wonder about it? And then that led into what Angie was just saying about basically becoming the recruiters, you know, finding people that you know you're intrigued with, that you can go and talk to and say, you know, there's something here that, you know, you might find interesting, or, and clearly that's part of the network, but that's not just, you know, the hub of Creating the Future, but the entire network of Creating the Future, all of the, you know, the people that are out there who they think might find this intriguing, as people did with Angie. You know, came to her and said, you know, hey, you might, you know, there's a position open, but it was really more about, I think you might find this interesting, or I think you might be a great fit for this, or whatever. So is it intriguing? And Hildy, you know, I think back to, you know, when we hired our first office manager and we created a job description that to that person was intriguing. I mean, they'd already retired. They weren't planning on working again. And they were so intrigued by what was being offered that they literally came out of retirement and they were fantastic. I mean, they were the perfect person for that job. So
I'm looking at Carl's note. What Steve Jobs said to the Pepsi executive John Scully to get him to Apple. Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world? All right, I'm good. I could run Apple.
I put that in there because I guess I was thinking in answer to the question that people want some joy, they want some optimism, they want some sort of sense of, yeah, you know what I mean, this is worth uprooting 1,500 miles for to go and do something different, and that purpose will you know, I guess it will play out to people in different ways and so on. But I think you know, I mean, if there was a sense that something good was happening and people could see how they could make a contribution to it, would be my sense of it anyway.
So what do we have that's intriguing? What brings you guys back all the time? Carl always talks about these meetings as his me time. John, you're jumping in here and eager. Angie's in the middle of God knows where, trying to bring her daughter back from DC, but jumped on here. What would be attractive? You all know us well enough. What do we have that is attractive to somebody? And again, this very first position is going to be, so let me list out some of what the positions will be. Some of them will be direct hires, some of them will be contracting. The first position is going to literally be somebody to work alongside me. We will be walking hand in hand, partners in this. It's not going to be somebody to work for me. It's going to be somebody to work with me. And we will be developing and running the next 3 years, the last 3 years of creating the future together. So it will be a limited time. You know, we're saying the end of 26. It may take into the middle of 26, but it's a finite time. So we're not talking about a job for life. I think these days that's almost attractive to people. Most people these days are not anymore looking for a job for life. It's unusual to find them. When somebody tells me I've been at this job for 19 years, I'm like, whoa, okay. And it will be at the same decision making. We will be making decisions together. We will be running things together, leading. And we'll be hiring, we'll be contracting with writers and video producers and podcast producers to create the vast library of resources that will be our legacy. And so it'll be hiring that, coordinating. There will be upcoming in part, the way we will be hiring and contracting with all of those writers and researchers and whomever. Part of that will probably be a collective enoughness campaign. Because, for example, video production, there's organizations that are already doing video production. Do we really need to hire a video producer when what we need is maybe, you know, a dozen videos? If there's an organization, I'm always sort of using World Wildlife Fund as the example, because they produce a bazillion videos a day on every animal on the planet. Do we partner with them and ask if their video production team can, and we do that together? So running a collective enoughness campaign, the same with website redesign. Is there some group someplace that already has a website team that is really active, that our tiny little thing would be something that we could cooperate on? So part of the work will be running a collective enoughness campaign. Some of it will be hiring and supervising. So it's really going to be at that level. It will be working, literally just working alongside me, partnering to make this last 3 years truly Bafo. Bafo. Yeah, we'll put Bafo in the ad. That'll, yeah.
That's intriguing.
So what is intriguing? What gets somebody out of the, well, I already have a pretty good job and I'm pretty comfortable here?
I think what you just said, though, Hildy, about not someone coming to work for you, but to work with you, that in and of itself is different. I think instead of saying we're going to put you in a position, it's really we're going to position you. And the difference is a star, because I think too often we come in with a whole lot of preconceived ideas about how this is going to go and what this job is going to be. And we all know that actually in life, it doesn't play out at all according to what your expectation was. So to have somebody open the door and say, we're not sure what the expectation is. We have a direction, we have a process, but we don't have a direct plan or direct locked in thing, I think makes a big difference. I've been doing some work assisting someone hiring as well. And so as I'm listening to the conversation, I was thinking, we kind of started out saying, okay, we want people who know us to talk about us. And now it looked like it wasn't going anywhere. So it takes a minute when you do that. It's not, it doesn't percolate out quickly. And so when we do our networks, I think sometimes we may not realize that it is going out. It just doesn't feel like it's going out. So we rushed out and of course went the let's just put an ad in something route and really got garbage. And I don't mean garbage in terms of people, but garbage in terms of matches. But interestingly enough, over not too much more time, people started to show up who says, I heard about this from so and so, and I'd really like to know more. Can you send me more information? And I think from our previous meeting, what I have found very effective is I share with them more than just this is a job. I explain, first of all, that I've been involved in this process with this organization 2 times before. And we found really good people. And so I have a sense of that we're looking for the right person for now, which may not have been the right person 7 years ago when we filled the position previously. So I think just there's an openness that is with this organization that can be important. The fact that we are a forward-looking organization and not a backward, this is the way we've always done it. This is how we hire people. This is what that looks like. This is what success looked like last year. But more, we're going to discover some stuff together. I think that discovery idea is very attractive to people today, especially. So I hope that contributes a little.
I love that word, discover. I also really love the we will position you to .
Mhm.
Yeah. What intrigues you, Carl? What makes this your me time?
Militant optimists. As in like people who genuinely sort of want to try and do things differently because we want to do things better. We're not just sort of like disruptors just for the sake of it. And at the risk of sort of like betray my views of some books I've just been reading that I mentioned before we came on air, it's not about ego, which is what I dislike about some of modern philanthropy and sort of people who portray themselves as change makers. I think we are a group of change makers who have left ego at the door and see this as a community effort to make change, not as a individual effort. Coming back to sort of what would attract someone, I mean, Hildy, so much of what this has been about you. So for me, I think in any attempt to recruit people, sort of has to put you front and center, because I think we want people who are going to come and carry the baton. They're going to take forward the flame. So I almost feel like in terms of sort of what would inspire me is that I would almost want to sort of capture you answering two questions. The first question is, what keeps you awake at night? Well, what are your burning issues that you care about? So to give a sense of people like why should I relate to them? And then the second question is, what makes you get out of bed in the morning? My point being that we can all talk about the things that we care about, our burning issues, but then what we want is to be able to say what gets me out of bed in the morning, i.e., what am I doing to sort out those things that I care about? And if you can say that on the video, then almost the first two interview questions are what keeps you awake at night and what gets you out of bed in the morning. Because I know I'm sure I can find out from your CV and all that sort of stuff about what skills you've got and why you're a perfect fit, but I want to know why this matters to you and why being part of this community is going to help you achieve the things that you think are important in your life. Because if that's my pitch to you about why you should come and work here, I think that's what someone would find attractive about coming here, is that this is about getting shit done.
Okay, so that's the title of the ad.
The two questions.
Now this is about getting shit done.
I'm planning to apply for this job.
Me too. Carl, I'm smiling. The night of the 2016 presidential election here, when it was clear that the country was going to take a really deep dive into the mess that we're currently in. Went to bed early. The decision hadn't been made. Got up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and was stupid enough to look at my phone and saw who had won the election. And both of your questions were what kept me up for the next hour. So I just flashed on that because the first one was, I don't even know how to make sense of it, just like everybody. I don't even know how to make sense of this. What the hell are we going to do? But the answer to the second question is our work is now more important than ever. Our work and our role. The first thing I did the next morning was announced on social media that we would be hosting a conversation live for anybody to participate in that wanted to use catalytic thinking to try to move beyond what we were all feeling. I remember several people from around the world wanted to be part of it, and I asked them if they would please just watch and not be part of it, that this was one of those rare circumstances where only Americans needed to be in the room talking. And it was because of that second question that I was able to fall asleep that night and say, okay, we need to bring people together and have a conversation using catalytic thinking, because it was entirely around that second question, Carl. Yeah, so thank you. That just sparked for me. We have a wonderful community around. It's not huge. On the other hand, we have a board member who has a huge community. Vu and I are doing a webinar next week. I've spoken with several board members. I still have others to talk to, Carl, among them, just about what's next, what's coming up, what we're facing, what we're trying to do, and where your role could be in that. And when Vu and I had that conversation, he said, let me write a blog post about catalytic thinking And then let's do what he calls a webinar, which is really just an online conversation about that. Invite his community to that conversation and see what bubbles up. Some of them may be funders, some of them may be seeking jobs, some of them because he's got such a vast audience. At last count, we have 1,400 people coming to that conversation next week. So as I'm thinking about our community and the we listed our first conversation about this, we listed who would be affected. We reach out through our community and we'll get applicants. And I love the fact that that's really what we're talking about is that an ad is not because we're going to publish the ad on monster.com or in the Chronicle of Philanthropy. The ad is because that's what we post at the website, that people will see, that somebody can share, that Angie can take out to her community and share the ad, that Vu can take out and Carl and John can take out and share with others. Not necessarily because we're posting it in what used to be the newspaper. I'm curious, and we'll keep coming up with things that will position us, because that's really what we're talking about here, is what positions us to be something that using your word, Dimitri, is intriguing. What do people need to know about us? What do people need to know about us in order to be intrigued?
I think having the attraction of working with you, Hildy, it's Carl already took before I could say it. But also opportunities to grow, to create larger change, like that. There's we're on a kind of growth trajectory, and that you're not kind of inheriting something that's got a bunch of problems yet because it's still new. So so that would actually sounds really great, right? Like you get to create something from the ground up. It's quite amazing opportunity.
Develop the position. I mean, John, you sort of alluded to that, but be part of developing the position itself. There's something I think people need to know, that while the position is new and the work that we're doing right now is new, that we're not new. And what our history is, part of the problem, and this is going to really take some folks who are good at this. Part of the problem is distilling all that we have accomplished over the past 10, 15 years into something that isn't overwhelming. Right now I'm trying to, and have been trying for months, to frame the opportunity for people who want to be part of this next step through funding. And the fact that it has taken me months and going through edits and reading it out loud to people and getting comments, and because it's big and huge, and what is the opportunity? I'm thinking the same thing in terms of sharing highlights of the history and what we've accomplished and what they're being a part of. I think what that would take is somebody other than me to write it. because I'm so deep in the thick of it that I'm realizing that I wouldn't have any idea what to tell people. But I think that's something that you all are, I mean, you're writing it right now. You're sharing it right now in terms of what's intriguing, what's exciting. I guess I'm just sort of babbling a little bit from my own point of view, if I'm trying to be succinct in writing this piece, that probably if I told it to all of you, you'd go, oh yeah, here's the 3 bullet points, Hildy, and just, we get set in the weeds here. But I think there's something about the highlights, I guess, the highlights of the history of what we have accomplished, because this next 3 years is about summarizing that, is about documenting that and sharing that out with the world. So something about the history. What else would people need to know about us that would be attractive? Okay,
I think they would need to have a sense of. Sorry, have I just interrupted someone?
Dimitri, did you?
Yeah, I two thoughts come to mind. One, that this is different. It's not an organization, support organization that's like other organizations, that its approach is different, what it's doing is different. And the other sort of opposing thought is that this is a movement, and it's not a job in the sense that we're producing widgets or contracts or whatever. We are really looking at creating social change. So in that context, it is a movement, and the people who are motivated by that are different than the people who are motivated by, oh, great, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and I'm going to do good work, but Carl, you touched upon it when you said, what keeps you up at night? What keeps me up at night is thinking about it in that context. Thinking about the world and what this means to that, what this means to people who are trying to work together in a way that is different than the way that is considered normal.
Awesome. Yeah, Carl.
I think people want to know what sort of I don't know what the word is I'm looking for here. I don't know if it's control or responsibility, but in other words, I guess what I'm trying to say is that what's the scope for somebody to change things and to lead things? I think that's one of the things that I think people want from their roles. Yeah. They want a sense of mastery and the opportunity to grow and develop and be good at what they do. We all want to do that, but they also want to be able to change things and like have some responsibility. So, I mean, you said it already that they're working alongside you, but
Yeah.
that sort of sense that like this is going to be someone who's going to shape things, not just implement things.
Yeah. What the word that comes to mind is authority.
Yeah.
What level of authority will folks have? Yeah. What is it about creating the future? What do they need to know about creating the future that in order to position us to be something that they'd be intrigued with?
I want to try to throw something in before we get away from authority, because the word that came to my mind a little different was agency. That really people want to feel they have agency, and therefore what they do makes a difference. I think a lot of times there's a desire to make change happen, what Dimitri was saying, to be a social change agent. But I think it also is critical to be able to feel like I really can make a difference, like I really matter. And I think there's the other word that comes to my mind is our culture, right? I mean, we're saying it's you, Hildy, but it's really this, there's a culture here that appreciates um thought, good thought. And there's not always places where you can find people who appreciate good thought, and you make it feel welcome. So I think that idea of it be a place where you can come and belong as opposed to be a part of, I think those are some of the essentials that really people are desperately looking for right now and not able to find. They're afraid they're just going to wind up going there, but I won't really make a difference. It's too entrenched, it's too traditional, it's too established, it's too structured. And I think there's a openness to this environment and a willingness to listen to one another that, again, people don't often feel like they're actually being heard. So I just think having an opportunity to share with people this is a different kind of place than you're maybe used to is a what I know that's why I came here. I followed creating the future for many years, but I didn't actively get involved. And then I was like, okay, I'm getting to a place where I want to make a contribution. I want to make a difference. And this looks like a place where I might have an opportunity to do that. And people are excited by that. I think when we talk about what's attractive about this, it's actionable. What you learn here is practical. It's not theoretical. It's very, and when you talk about the work you've done, it's work that's actually working. It's not just another set of platitudes and rules that we talk about. It's actually, we're defining the future with these meetings. And people don't feel like there's a lot of places in the world today where they will be impactful like that. So
Thank you, John. Thank you. The word that comes to mind as you're speaking is that it's a place of hope. And right now, I think we need. I just got an email from some group this morning that said something about the fact that we all feel helpless at this point. That the things going on in the world are so huge, and so many of us feel powerless to do anything about it. And that's as you're talking about, this is something practical that you can do right now in your life. There's something that about our feeling helpless. Okay, there's agency. I love the word agency, that you can do something. Yeah. Thank you. I love your observations. It makes me feel good that that's what that is how we are perceived. We want to be perceived as that, but it makes me feel good to know that we are. What else do you all think people need to know about creating the future to make this intriguing?
We've talked about it in a way which is about the things that we are. I think they also need to know about the things that we aren't. We're not rich. As you've said already, we have a community. I mean, is it the biggest in the world? No, it's not. But is it a community that is engaged? Yes, it is. they need to know that with, say, this group of people that comes to these meetings, that maybe they're not the usual suspects, and that they're not the sorts of people that necessarily will make instant decisions, and that they'll want things to percolate for a bit. I don't know if we've sort of had this conversation before because we've been doing this for a bit now, but a bit like the slow food movement. Like we are the slow non-profit movement, and that's a good thing. And they need to know that we care and that we want change, but they also need to know that we are not driven by short-term metrics. That I don't know what I'm trying to say here. We value change, but the way that we think about change isn't just about measuring it and yeah. Sorry, I don't know if that's coming out very well, but
No,
I think you know
it's
what I'm saying.
great. It's great.
The word that came to my mind when I was listening to, and you asked the question, is we're not an institution. And I think that a lot of times people want to become institutions, and they don't recognize that kind of gets you stuck. It's like going into, when you capture one of those insects in some kind of quartz, it's like you're locked in. I think it's very dynamic, very aliveness. And I think it's important that people know it's not, while it's identifiable, why it has an identity, it's not fixed. It's almost like it's very much alive. People can come and become part of that life and add to it. I always tell people the tables don't change because they're dead. People change. And I think we fear that. And yet that is the signature of being something that's alive. So I think the fact that we are very much not an institution is really important. I'm sorry, Dimitri.
Yeah. Go ahead, hon.
What you were saying, John, what it sparked in my mind is we move forward with questions, not with rhetoric. So to me, that's really powerful. And that addresses the fact that it's not frozen in quartz or amber or whatever. That it is constantly adjusting and changing based on the answers to the questions. So I think that's an important part of what we are and what we're not, Carl.
Well, that was possibly a more erudite way of saying what I was going to say, is that they need to know that we don't have all the answers. They need to know that we haven't worked it all out yet, that we have a way that we think is promising, that it's helpful and so on, but we're still on a journey of discovery. We didn't call it a living laboratory for nothing. So again, I think what I'm sort of trying to speak to here is trying to get a bit of a sense of what's people's, not just what are their values, but what are their ways of working. Is being curious something that might characterize them? Because I think that sort of characterizes our community, that we're not just intellectually curious. We're curious about how change happens and how to accelerate that.
Yep.
So that point I just made then about accelerating, I don't think we're looking for someone who's just going to sort of come in and sort of expect to find, a solar light bulb, and that it's their job to essentially work out how to go from making 20 of these a month to 20 million of these a year. That's not what this is.
So given how we've described sort of what the position is, loosely described what the position is, what qualities would we be looking for in an applicant?
My university, when they talk about students, they talk about KSBs, knowledge, skills, and behavior. But it's missing a V for me. I'm probably more interested in the behaviors and the values than the knowledge and the skills. And I think we've begun to talk about some of those already, but for me, in terms of sort of the behaviors, about being curious, about being prepared to let things percolate, not rushing to conclusions. Of course, being inclusive, because and I think that's inclusive of ideas and as well as people, because we've got to sort of we've got to find our sort of way forward there. And the behaviors, I think that's about. I think this thing about us as a community. You know, there are all those cliches, aren't there, about how, what is it about you advance at the speed of trust? I can't quite remember what they are, but the point that I'm sort of making here is that there's something in terms of behaviors that's about, this is a sort of place where bringing people with you is important. And that's not just someone who's like some fantastic influencer and knows how to campaign, but it's a bit more than that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Justin. I'm sorry for all the confusion.
That's okay. It didn't make any difference in my life because I was occupied until just now. So
Good. Okay. I just wanted to make sure you saw we were on. We thought we were off. We were on. We have been talking about, I will give you a quick, and then other people can chime in and say what I missed. We were starting out asking the question about what would attract people, what would lead to our getting a diverse pool of applicants. What would we need to have? And it was very, very clear from the conversation. And Angie shared that Angie is starting a new position in August, which is just awesome. But having been through 2 hiring processes right now, one for her and one for the dean of the school where she is at currently, she's very, very fresh in what works and what doesn't. And what came out of the what will attract, you know, how do we get the biggest pool of applicants? People talked over and over and over again that it's about word of mouth, that it's not going to be an ad in the Chronicle of Philanthropy, that it's going to be through networks. We started to talk about what's intriguing about the position, what would position us to be someone's choice, where if they're not currently looking for work, they'd go, that sounds interesting. I think I'd like to dip my toe in and play with that. And that has led to our talking right now about what qualities we would be seeking in an applicant, understanding that the position is really to work alongside me, and that we would be co-producing the next 3 years of creating the future. And so what we just started to talk about is the qualities that we would be seeking in an applicant. And talking about curiosity, thoughtfulness, and the willingness to let things percolate, rather than someone who's we got to get moving, we got to get moving, we got to get moving. someone who is inclusive in their way of being, both and inclusive of people, inclusive of ideas, and the importance of bringing people along with them, that they're an inclusive in the way that they be in the world. And so I throw it back out to the group again of what, knowing what we have talked about so far, what qualities would we be seeking in an applicant for that specific position?
So one thing that pops to my mind, and I will say this comes off of talking to lots of people about, I'm in the process of doing some planning for a large organization that's an intermediary. So talking to lots of nonprofit leaders and stakeholders and such. Systems thinking, like people have, made a clear distinction that there are some people who think that way and there are others that don't, and not in a disparaging way, but just saying, we're wired differently. And so reflecting, so I don't necessarily know the answer, but reflecting to what degree does that systems network disposition, to what degree is it necessary for the role?
Yeah. Absolutely. What else? What else occurs to you?
Excuse me, can I go back for a second, Justin? Can you elaborate just a little bit more on how you would know that or see that?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that I know the answer to that. That's like the $64,000 question. No, I think what I generally observe is people who seem to be able to take the wide lens and speak to, the interconnectedness. I think and I also think it's people who are comfortable with complexity. Like, not necessarily that they're brilliant at knowing the complexity, but I think we see just people who are willing to ask that question, well, is that a structural thing or is that a behavioral thing or is it and so for me, those are kind of the triggers that I think someone's in that space, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, that comfort with complexity is
That makes me think about back to connected to values and kind of worldview. Like there's I think we do what Creating the Future does is think about the systems and how they could change to enable to bring out the best in us, assuming that we are all trying to do our best, right? And we're inherently good. But I think there are I have colleagues who maybe sometimes assume oh, maybe that, for example, students are not trying as hard as they could, or trying to work the system, or trying to, and it's more about the people than the system or the organization or the larger social structures. And I don't know what that is. I don't know. I don't know if that's we're brought we're that way by nature or nurture. I don't know, but there's certainly our people out there that are more in tune with the larger structures and systems that can be changed, as opposed to focusing on the individual. I don't know. I mean, they're connected, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to say this or how we would even advertise for that, but just kind of, I guess, extending a bit what you were saying, Justin and John.
Sometimes I think that we see this in the negative, that we're more likely to see someone who is not a systems thinker than identifying that they are. What other qualities would we be looking for? You know, if we were to do the way that I've always taught board recruitment is there's the must-haves, there's the wouldn't it be nice, and there's the never in a million years. What are the must-haves? I mean, that's really what we're talking about here, is what are the must-haves? Because the wouldn't it be nice, you know, you mentioned, Carl, that the knowledge and the skills, that would be nice. I'm not sure what the skills are, but you know, the must-haves, what are really what we're talking about here, the curiosity, the thoughtfulness, the systems thinking, the network thinking, the inclusive thinking, the assuming the best in people. That's a huge one. And you're right, Angie, that's the one that we always can tell in the negative. That's the one that's real obvious in the negative. What are other must-haves?
It's what some people, I'm thinking June Holly would call network weaving skills, convening skills, however we want to describe them. If our thesis around abundance is correct, the ability to sort of weave those threads together is quite important.
Yeah.
And at the risk of contradicting something I said earlier about like not rushing to judgment and so on, I think someone who maybe is a little bit better than us collectively when we meet at moving us on. So I think we're a bit too far at the end of the spectrum in terms of discussing and letting ideas percolate. I think I don't want someone at the other end of the spectrum who's going to like be constantly pushing us, but I do want someone that's going to help us move forward.
Yep. Not sure how to articulate this, but well, maybe it's just someone needs to have a great deal of energy. It's not just physical energy, but just emotional energy. There needs to be, you know, we've been talking about forward moving and inclusive. There's something about energy in there. I'm not sure how to articulate it. But you know, it sort of sounds woo-woo to say they need to have a positive energy, but they need to have positive energy. There's something,
As you're saying that, Hildy, it makes me think really excitement for the inquiry. So that curiosity, like that they're excited by that. Because I think I've been challenged recently about the role of passion and how, particularly in the community benefit, when we say we need someone with passion, it can be a crutch for not compensating them in what they really need. It's a way of filling the gap that's there, which I thought was really interesting. So I was trying to think about, okay, well, what is it that we are looking for? And I think that energy, but it might even be, again, the word that struck to mind was excitement for the curiosity and inquiry.
yeah.
That we see them sort of actively wanting to do that, even if they're struggling on how to do it, they're wanting to do it.
Right. It was so interesting. Dimitri brought up earlier the fact that in our very, very first one, when we first bought the real estate company that we were working at back in 1993, and we knew that we needed someone to be an office manager so that they could handle what was going on in the day-to-day so that we could go out and change the way the company was, change it from a real estate company into what we eventually became. And we put an ad in the paper the woman who we wound up hiring came out of retirement to take the job. And the only reason she had been reading the want ads was because when she was retired, she had spent her entire career in HR. And so every Sunday, she read the want ads as entertainment. She wanted to just see what was going on in what had been her field. She'd been retired for several years. And to her, she just read the want ads because that was, see what people are doing. And she happened to see our ad, and she was so intrigued by the ad that she put in her resume. There was, and what she saw was that excitement. What she saw was that potential, that possibility. But she also showed that back to us. And just by saying, I'm retired and this is really, really interesting to me. We talked about the cover letter asking, why are you intrigued with this? Why do you want this job? Why are you applying for this job? There's something there about the excitement and the energy. What else would we be looking for? What else are the must-haves?
I'm having trouble figuring out how to flip the script on this, but the opposite of the person who says, well, that's too big, that's too audacious, that's too overwhelming. But I think to Carl's point also has a practicality, but I'm sure many of us have been in meetings where people say, well, that's just too big. We can't take that on. Or that's too complicated. I mean, it goes back to the not being afraid of complicated, but there's also just something about that. My vocabulary just left me, so
That's okay.
I'll just stop. I'll just stop there.
No, you were talking earlier about comfort with complexity. It's easy to identify, again, in the negative, somebody who says that's too big, that's too daunting. There's then the people who say, we can break this down and we can do this. Yeah.
So Hildy, I said at the beginning that I'm working on this project at the moment called Moonshot Philanthropy. So I've been reading a few books, including one I've just put in the chat that was the guy who interviewed all the staff at Mission Control at NASA. He said all people from very humble backgrounds and so on. And I've also just read there's a book called Big Bets by the president of the Rockefeller Foundation. Shah is his surname. His first name just escapes me at the minute. And I think all these books, they're all sort of discussing similar issues to us in the sense that for them, psychology is critical in terms of sort of moving forward. And I think what I'm sort of trying to say here is that there's almost some of the things that we've talked about, like passion, for example, that's come out in their sort of analyses of the book. So I completely accept what Justin says, but it's interesting that people from a commercial background and from a public sector background are also talking about the importance of passion. They also talk about other things like sort of determination and so on. But I guess for me, what I think I'm interested in is how do you find those characteristics to drive you forward, but without the complete lack of humility that I think is evident in some of those texts, especially the ones that are the more autobiographical end of the spectrum.
Right.
And I think we would know it if we saw it. So, we don't want someone who's so self-effacing that they would never get anything done because, as you say, I mean, it seems too big. But equally, how do you find those people that aren't afraid of an audacious project, that have the ability to break it down, that you said,
Yep.
but recognize, and I mean, to be fair, the Shaw book does do this. I mean, he recognizes that his most successful big bets are where he has sort of been part of a team, and he's recognized that you can't do it on your own and that you have to think differently. But yeah, there was just a bit of a lack of humility in that book. I mean, it was, he never sort of quite mentioned that, like, having whatever a foundation behind you that has $1 billion or whatever is quite helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, we here in the States talk a lot about self-made billionaires. Daddy only gave them a couple $1 million to start. Here's something that you're making me think about, Carl. Somebody needs to be comfortable with being the public face. That yeah, I know I am the public face for the most part, but there's going to be times where it's not me, and they've got to be articulate enough on their feet to be able to be the public face when that is needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just occurred to me as you were talking. We've got a little bit of time. I'd really like to dive into the question, we'll see how far we get on it, of what do we do with the folks we don't hire? Because to me, that's always the biggest missed opportunity. Years ago, Dimitri and I were, when we were still consulting, we were working with a foundation that wanted us to run a community of practice, a learning community for their grantees for a very specific granting project that they had done. And they were only going to grant 5 large grants. And they were really large. It was maybe 100,000 a year for 5 years. And they wanted a learning community for those 5. And we said, how many applicants did you get? They got about 100 applicants. And how many of those would you have funded if you had all the money in the world? And they said probably 85. And our answer was, why are we only offering a learning community to the 5? And you know, you don't have to give them money. Just if we're going to be there anyway, invite them into the room. It costs you absolutely, it costs you a little bit more in coffee and Danish, and donuts. And so I'm curious what you all have seen, if anything, about keeping engaged applicants engaged in what we're doing.
So I guess my first observation is that in some respects, it's a small world. And I always sort of tended to think that you're going to come up, you're going to encounter these people at some point in the future. And as someone who's not very good at conflict, I always sort of felt that I wanted them to have a good experience, even if they didn't get it. So I always tried to, even when I had to tell people that they hadn't got a job, I always tried to make it as good an experience as possible by giving them some genuine feedback that I hoped would help them do better next time, or help them in their sort of next appraisal. Personally, I always made the effort to, if I ever interviewed someone, I always rang the people after I interviewed them, regardless of whether they got the job or not. I thought that was important. I mean, it wasn't always a pleasant experience, and I can't say I enjoyed it, but I thought it was the right thing to do. And I hope that stood me in good stead. I guess you sort of, I guess, like the fact that someone took that effort to sort of do that thing and sort of come and join you, you clearly then have something in common. So it's almost about sort of saying to them, it wasn't this time, but that doesn't mean there isn't going to be a next time.
Yeah.
So I think there's sort of absolutely everything that Carl, you said, and because of the nature of creating the future and that we've created universal access to what's there, I think even being able to affirm to someone, if you are curious about this, there's a whole learning platform. Like you can engage, you could do what you thought you wanted to do in this job, maybe where you are. And pointing them to saying, you know, whether that is, you know, ensuring they understand that they have access to it, if it's graciously providing access to something that might normally be a fee, or, you know, some way of basically saying, because you were curious and thought this was something you were interested in, let's honor that by giving, you know, we're not giving you a job, but we're giving you perhaps a path.
Right.
You know, as you were talking about this, Carl, and what you just said, Justin, I'm thinking about, I just applied for a job at Coca-Cola and I didn't get it. And Coca-Cola says, well, we have a community of practice of people who love cola, and we'd like you to be part of that community. I can't imagine that. And yet here we have an organization that is built for that. And is built for people who are interested and energized. And because what it is doing, Carl, it is emphasizing the V. And that's really what we're saying when we're talking to these people. So what I extrapolate from that is this person tells someone, wow, this was really a great experience, whatever. And that could be the person that we're looking for. And because they become sort of ambassadors for the process, but also for the values that they wanted to share, but for whatever reason didn't happen.
Yeah. I've always been amazed at employers who you send in your resume and you never hear a thing. I mean, you know, you invited people to the party. They showed up. The least you can say is thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not just the people that we might have interviewed and had some kind of relationship with, but everybody that sends in a resume gets a note back saying, I'm sorry you didn't make it, or we'd love to talk to you or something, but you know, be human. I think this is a conversation I would like to continue the next time that we chat, because I think that there's tremendous lost opportunity in just saying, well, we hired the one person and those 100 other people who were really interested in creating the future, we don't care about you. Yeah, there's something juicy there. But right now, yeah.
Your point about being human and treating people with dignity, we talked about this the last time we met, and it sounds so easy to do, but my sense is that it's actually very, very difficult for organizations to do. And I can't explain that.
I don't know if it's difficult, Carl, or if they think it's just, or they just don't do it. I don't, it's, you know, I mean, to not respond to, so you have their email, they sent you the resume. It would take your assistant 15 minutes to copy and paste. Sorry, we'd love to, and that's, I think that it's become so the norm that people I don't think it's hard. I think that they just don't do it.
It's the equivalent of charity saying thank you for a donation. It must be hard because a lot of them aren't very good at it.
I don't know. John,
You know, as we were saying this, I think before we talked about this idea of making sure we check off all of the check boxes and we're very careful. I think that scares us out of that process sometimes. It's like if we get through the process with them and they don't get hired, we don't want to have the possibility of them feeling or asking questions about why'd you pick that person and not me. So I think it is an uncomfortable, I think, Carl, it's uncomfortable. You know, the interesting thing is I'm interviewing people for this position I'm working. But one of the things I did is apply all of the stuff we did in our last meeting. So at the beginning of the interview, I was like, we're trying to get the right person. I want to tell you how the process is going to work. I want to answer any questions you have. And so now we've created a community, right? Because now we're in a shared experience. So then at the end of the interviews, they're like, well, no matter what happens, John, I want to stay in touch. And, you know, so I've created that opportunity to build that community right at the beginning of the process instead of waiting to the end of the process. Now, do I think that's going to be easy all the time? Like I said, I think somebody's going to ask me, well, why did they pick that person and not me? Or, you know, why is that happening? And, you know, but I'm okay. I can handle those questions. But I think the other part is, though, there are other places where I can see opportunity for them to contribute to the welfare of what this whole thing was about in the first place. And at a personal level, you know, I really learned a lot from them. You know, the one thing I found, if I asked somebody, how'd you raise $1 million? They're never going to tell me. But if they're interviewing with me and I say, you're going to have to raise $1 million, how do you think you'll do it? They'll tell me everything. And I thought, man, this is really kind of cool. I should just interview people, even if there are no jobs, just so that I can learn how to do more things. So I think if we see them and treat them as contributing resources in a way that, you know, we create an opportunity for them, I think that's going to benefit us. You know, this is my third time doing this for the same organization. So I filled this position before, but I often felt, you know, I'm listening to all these candidates. All of them are not going to get hired, but there are a lot of good ideas out there. If I can harvest some of those ideas, if I can help this organization harvest some of those ideas from those people, and like you said, it might only cost me a cup of coffee and a donut to do that, then I would be foolish to have not cultivated that and taken advantage of it. So, you know, I do feel though that a lot of the you know, I don't want the possibility of people coming back and saying I feel like you discriminate. The nice part about being me is most people aren't going to say I feel like you discriminated against me. So that part I don't, I kind of come with a kind of camouflage. And so, you know, so that part I can handle. But I just think you're right. There's a lot of untapped value that goes out the door when the process ends. And I work with another organization. We just laid a young man off. And so I checked with the organization. I said, would it be okay with you if I contact him? Because I know he's not going to be working for you, but I think he's a big part of the future of our community. And I want to make sure that I can keep that relationship going. So I think we just have to go into it with the idea of we are not just interviewing people. We are really expanding our network. We're really incorporating them and really recruiting future contributors in our network.
Beautiful.
You know, John, your story reminds me in one of these meetings years ago, and I don't remember if we were talking about finance or if we were actually talking about some of the personnel stuff, but one of the things that came up was, what does it mean to orient yourself to enriching an asset so that it is worth more when it leaves your care than when it came in? And we talked about that with people, we talked about it with money, and This really resonates with that for me, is sort of thinking about, okay, how does any applicant become, leave richer for the experience? Not just giving to us, but also, of themselves. And I think we've touched on some of it, but even as simple as like, yeah, if you apply, you have access to all this material. Like just, it's, even if it's just that, saying, yeah, you put effort in, we're going to put effort back and connect you really authentically. Because that is a big equity question, which is the burden of applying for things that it puts on people. And it's always you prove to me that you're worthy of working for me. And I'm like, I'm trying to instill in my daughters. I'm like, no, when you go to an interview, make them prove that they're worthy of you. Like, ask some questions that help give you well, she's doing it now with colleges. I'm like, ask coaches, like, what they do to support their athletes. Like, don't just tell them what you're going to give them. So I think, yeah, the degree to which we can proactively put forward some conditions that just say, look, if you apply, yeah, actually there's a checkbox of things that you're going to have access to, whether you get the job or not.
Wow. Wow. I'm excited about this. I think I'll apply.
You have access to all of this material that you wrote.
Oh, that. Oh, that. This is exciting. I can't wait to raise our first little batch of money that we can start hiring this person. So we'll be keeping those crossed. First, thank you all. This was just, I have to share that I came into this conversation this morning tired. I didn't sleep good last night. I came in tired, and now I'm feeling very, very energized. So thank you all, because it's about me. And we had this meeting so I could feel energized. If you took any notes today, if you will go through and circle anything that stood out to you, and let's take a deep breath. It has been a lively conversation, and share what's standing out to you from our conversation today.
I start because I wanted to just add a little bit to what John and Justin were saying, which is when we it just reminded me of, like, we did a lot of changing in our doctoral programs, have applicants to our program where it used to be like a mystery, right, to applicants about what they should be doing to kind of show us or describe to us how they might benefit from coming to our program. And then also so we could see how we could provide support and making sure that's mutually beneficial. And so over time, we created more and more tools for applicants, like giving them example essays from previous students, describing more particularly about, what kinds of things we want them to write about and talk about. So anyway, all that's to say, like, trying to help people put their best foot forward in the process, and then hopefully also they benefited. So when they applied probably to other programs, they had those tools to make them more competitive as well. And so I just think, like, adding to the other discussion about how we can help, people be their best. And we also hopefully can be our best at the same time, and think about things flexibly in a way, like we're maybe going to hire one person, but depending on what kind of pool we get, we might think about things in a very creative way and how people can be engaged in different ways as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad you were here today. What else is standing out to you all from our conversation today?
Could I go next, please?
Please do.
So my reflection from today is that this has been a conversation about how we do things better. and do things more differently. And I think we've identified a number of things that can be done, which don't necessarily cost money, don't necessarily cost time or anything like that, that might fundamentally improve the experience of recruitment. And to come back to my word that I used before, and make it a more dignified process for everybody involved. So my reflection on today is that we need to try and understand more about, well, why doesn't this stuff happen? Because we haven't described anything today that is intellectually tricky. We haven't had any light bulb moments in terms of radical new ways of doing anything. We've just talked essentially about being a bit more human. We've just talked about just being nice to people a bit more. So again, I will say, like, there's nothing here that is radical or sort of anything like that, except it is radical because what we're describing doesn't really happen that often. And I think we need to unpick that a bit because I'm not quite sure we've asked enough questions yet about why some relatively simple ways of working seem to be not that widespread.
Yep.
I think I'll dovetail off of Carl. Carl, you and I are always playing ping pong. This, um, that human side of it and life side of it, I think is, obviously that resonates with me. And I actually just read an article this morning from the Chronicle of Philanthropy about CEOs, and and in a lot of this interviewing I've been doing, it's talking about just the burden of administration and just the imbalance of life. And people keep talking about succession, and it like becomes really apparent to me. I'm like, well, when we don't make these jobs human sized, and life sized, they what can we expect? And so I think sort of for me, and it might be sort of one more thing to plug in here, is we actually want people who can speak to and advocate for balance in their life, and in a way in which what they're doing is fulfilling. And I think that's different than passion, than being totally inspired and energetic. I mean, some people do come to a job to do a job, and that's okay. But I think that it really just honoring the humanity and the balance is it's just so critical. And to Carl's point, it's not hard to conceive of that, or to even, it is structurally hard to do it because we've made jobs that are imbalanced. Like, that's the problem, is that it's like, not that you don't want to do it, it's that when you say, here's everything that has to get done in 24-hour period of time, it's 32 hours worth of work. That we've also manufactured, but I think that it does speak to structurally jobs have been created to be inhuman in general.
What we have been observing in all of the systems change conversations that we have been having is that the entire system that the nonprofit sector is built on mistrust. Boards are built on mistrust. Human resources, God knows, is built entirely on mistrust. We know you're going to screw up, and here's the 7 things that can happen between your first screw up and when we finally ask you to leave. That these whole systems are built on mistrust, and so what we're seeing is the result of that. But yeah, thank you for both of those observations. John, what's standing out to you today? You're muted.
I think this idea of being curious, of kind of recognizing curiosity and creativity as kind of a combo pair that gives that energy, that creates that dynamic of looking for a better answer, being willing to accept that we don't have all the answers. And I think being able to identify with that and not be concerned. I think sometimes we feel concerned that somebody's going to think we're not competent or we're not, whatever all those other C things are that we're supposed to be. So I just think that's a youthful quality as well. And I think that it energizes what you said a few minutes ago. It really, I walk away from these meetings not feeling like I sat in a 2-hour meeting, but more like I took a shower and now I'm ready to go out and do some stuff. So I just think that that dynamic part of it is really something we need to make sure we can put in a bottle. When you say what's intriguing about us, that to me, this is a place that energizes instead of innervates. And I think that's really what's important.
Thank you. Dimitri, how about you? What's standing out to you?
The conversation around, or the thought around, the reciprocal nature of the relationship between the applicant and the organization. That it is, the traditional power dynamic is a power dynamic of, I've got the job, you want it, so therefore that's the power dynamic. And the idea that there is value and things to be shared reciprocally is, to me, really intriguing and really powerful. And that's what I got out of this, or one of the things that was most standing out for me today.
Yeah, there's something, the thing that's absolutely standing out to me is that question of, you've got 100 great applicants. You've got, I shouldn't say applicants. You've got people who apply, 100 fabulous humans. We continue talking to one of them and send 99 of them out into the world and say, yep, you were awesome, but bye. There's just something really intriguing there about which I guess is the difference between an organization and a movement, but we're part of a movement. And if we see ourselves as part of a movement, what does it take to continue relationship? If we see this as we're just looking for the one person that we're going to get married to, are we keeping a relationship with everything else, with everyone else? I don't know what the answer is, but there's something very intriguing in that to me. I will look forward to seeing all of you next time. June 10th is when we'll be getting together. Monday, June 10th. Please put it on your calendars because you all are awesome and I'm looking forward to being with you all again. So we will see you then. And thank you all. This has been really energizing. Thank you.
Good to see you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Dimitri, for the email.